What's up, YouTube Revolution? ZombfectedGaming 349 at your fingertips. So today is the day I'm gonna give my honest review on Dying Light 2 Stay Human, and I'm gonna be 100% honest with all my opinions on the game, so don't get all offended by the things I will say about this game if you have a different opinion. Just to let you all know, I'm also experiencing Dying Light 2 Stay Human on the PS4. Alright, so let's get into this honest review. First of all, let's go back to the beginning. 7 years ago, I was super excited for the release of Dying Light 1, which released on January 27th, 2015, because it was bringing something new to the table with an open world parkour playground in a zombie infested world, which was just super awesome.
All right, I'm in.
I'm also gonna be honest about Dying Light 1's story. It was good, not fantastic or great or bad, just good. It was good to me because it was more of what I expected. These type of zombie apocalypse stories are good to me. I'm a huge AMC's The Walking Dead fan, which is a TV series I've seen all the way through, and I love the storytelling that show has, since zombie apocalypse stories to me, in my opinion, are just so good to me, and I always wanted to play an open world zombie game in a world kinda similar to The Walking Dead's TV series. And what I mean by that, these are the type of zombie apocalypse stories that are my favorite, is because they don't just focus on the dangers of zombies being the threat. I'm talking about how the zombie apocalypse changes human beings into monsters by making humans more aggressive in their everyday survival life, and sometimes making them even more of a threat than the zombies. And it can even cause wars between other human factions. And these wars is what causes the zombies to get all crazy and form a horde to come towards all the humans fighting in wars, and makes for an extremely insane free-for-all, using the zombies as your advantage to take out your enemies while they are distracted. This is like a new form of the art of warfare in tactics. In these type of zombie apocalypse worlds, whether it's Dying Light, The Walking Dead, or The Last of Us, etc.
I believe it.
No, wait!
These are the kind of worlds where the last biggest fight in human history has been fully surpassed, and that is World War II. In our real-life world, nothing has surpassed World War II yet, besides somewhat of our real-life pandemic since 2020. But still, that isn't as nearly as bad as World War II. Alright, so with all that out of the way, we can finally talk more about Dying Light 2 Stay Human. Dying Light 2 Stay Human is set 20 years after the events of Dying Light 1, during the Harran epidemic. But the story picks up 15 years after the fall of civilization, meaning that the Harran virus pandemic happened 5 years after the Dying Light 1 Harran epidemic, meaning that it spread to the rest of the world 5 years after Dying Light 1. I'm not gonna spoil the entire story in this review because that would be too much storytelling. I'm just gonna go a bit into the interesting lore of the Dying Light universe. But let's talk about the gameplay, the most important thing about the game. The parkour is what stands out the most in the game, since the parkour can really make you feel like you're playing a game with superpowers, because this time in Dying Light 2, the parkour abilities have been doubled compared to the first game, which already had a crazy amount of parkour abilities. You can wall run and even use a grappling hook like in the first game, but this time it's a more realistic grappling hook, and at times it can make you really feel like Spider-Man swinging from his webs. There is also a paraglider, which is a lot like the Far Cry parachutes, but so much better. You can control the paraglider like the way Rico Rodriguez from the Just Cause games can control his parachutes. But keep in mind, when it comes to the grappling hook and the paraglider, you can only get access to them through parts of the story and not the skill tree. You also need to find airdrops around the map, getting access to military tech that upgrades the grappling hook and paraglider. It's all about taking risks and getting rewards. Speaking of taking risks, I'll tell you the most risky and scariest risks to me in the game. It's not the zombies, not the nighttime, not the volatiles, not the human enemies. It's the heights and the gravity that scares me the most. You need to get airdrops by scaling really tall buildings and even doing parkour puzzles while climbing antenna tower puzzles while the antenna tower moves while you're climbing. It's honestly the most scariest thing to me in the entire game. You could already be on top of a skyscraper and there's an already towering tall antenna tower on top of that skyscraper that the game wants you to climb. So make sure you upgrade your stamina before climbing tall towers, or else your stamina will run out fast and you will fall to your death, and it's extremely realistic. You will need to go into the quarantine zones to find inhibitors, which is what upgrades your health and stamina. But there is a big challenge when it comes to these quarantine zones. Go there during the day, you will be swarmed by volatiles, since during the day the volatiles hide in dark buildings to hide from the sun. But by nightfall, it's safe to go into them because the volatiles have left the dark buildings, so you will have a safer chance going in to get the inhibitors. Speaking of nighttime gameplay, in this game it's actually scarier than the first game in my opinion. I've noticed people saying that the night in Dying Light 2 is less scarier. I 100% disagree. The night in Dying Light 2 is so much longer and darker. The only time nighttime looks brighter is when you're in areas illuminated by moonlight. Also in Dying Light 2, your flashlight is so much darker than in the first game. And I've even noticed people have complained that there aren't any volatiles out on the street at night except for when you're on chase level 3. I understand why Techland did this because the volatiles are so much more stronger and have mutated after the past 20 years. The virals in this game are actually almost as strong as the volatiles in the first game. The virals will try to leap at you and you will get knocked over a lot. In Dying Light 1, the virals only just chase you and try to slap you. But maybe for those who want an extra challenge with the volatiles out on the streets might get their wish one day. Maybe Techland will allow for an option to turn on volatiles patrolling the nighttime streets along with the howlers and the virals. Also, one more thing about the nighttime. When the night starts shortly after the humans ring bells and alarms for humans to come home, the sound of the start of the night is so silent and creepy and very eerie, and Techland nailed the sound of the atmosphere in this game in both day and night. Just listen to the sound of the nighttime starting. Now let's talk about the combat. It's a bit of a confusing topic. I enjoy the combat just as much as the first game's combat. But at times, the combat in the first game is much more gory than in the second game. But in 2, there is much more martial arts to do, and I'm all for the martial arts and I love it. You can block hits from enemies and do perfect parries and all kinds of martial art tricks on both humans and zombies. You will definitely have more trouble fighting humans since they are smart and have the brains to fight you better. So make sure you practice on the zombies since they are your punching bags. But I do gotta say, I do enjoy Dying Light 1's and Dying Light 2's combat system equally. But I also gotta say that Dying Light 1's combat system is much more smoother, probably because it's an older game and has been polished over the many years. But yeah, let's get into talking about the bugs. There can be some extremely annoying bugs in Dying Light 2, but it doesn't change my opinion about the game because these bugs aren't permanent. Techland will definitely make sure the game is way more polished over time. I'm also playing on the PlayStation 4 version, just like I said earlier. The PlayStation 4 version of Dying Light 2 isn't too bad. It's not like Cyberpunk's PlayStation 4 version where the game was super buggy and just felt completely unplayable. Dying Light 2 on PlayStation 4 can run smoothly for me at times. But there are times I will have to reset my game since after playing for many hours can glitch out the game. But yeah, other than that, great game. I also want to bring up how Techland enhanced Dying Light 1 in 2016, when Dying Light the following release, just 1 year after the main game, and the enhancements update they did made the game look so much better than what it did back in 2015. The way Dying Light 1 looks now is from the enhancements from 2016. So we will probably have the same enhancements treatment for Dying Light 2 in the future at some point. Let's get talking a bit about the story. You are Aiden Caldwell, a pilgrim who came back to Villador ever since he was a kid to find his long-lost sister. Aiden last seen his sister Mia when he was a kid when Dr. Waltz, the main villain, was experimenting on kids, and Aiden and his sister was one of those kids being experimented on because Dr. Waltz believed that the kids had a stronger resistance to the virus. But from there on, when you reach Villador, you can choose to work between two factions called the Survivors and the Peacekeepers, and you will continue to work with them to get them to help you find your sister and the main villain Waltz. I'm not going to spoil a bunch of the story because this may be a game you want to experience on your own. But my opinions on this type of story I really like. It's the kind of post-apocalyptic concept I really enjoy. I don't agree with what some others say about the story, saying it's bad and a boring story. Those are the kind of people who are probably not a fan of zombie post-apocalyptic worlds. This is probably a story more for the people who really enjoy shows like The Walking Dead, and movies like Resident Evil. Also, speaking of that, Dying Light is actually like a mix of The Walking Dead and Resident Evil because Dying Light is going into much more of a sci-fi direction, but is still less sci-fi than Resident Evil. The Walking Dead doesn't have as much sci-fi elements to it and tries to remain more realistic. But one more thing about Dying Light 2's story. It's not a bad story, not a good story. It's just a great story. Not fantastic like The Last of Us or Red Dead Redemption 2, that's how I describe the game. Dying Light 1 was just good, but it was good enough for me to keep replaying the story non-stop with my friends in co-op for the many 7 years it was out, and I definitely beat it over 100 times. I can see myself doing the same thing with Dying Light 2 with my friends in co-op for the next many years. And also what really connects together a great story and great gameplay is the awesome music that is put into this game composed by Olivier de Riviere. The music just really pumps up the adrenaline, especially when you're either parkouring or are in combat, or even when you're endangered or in spooky situations, and even some ambient music in the game is so well done. The music in Dying Light 2 is so fantastic. It's comparable to Red Dead Redemption 2's, and even some of it kind of reminds me of the classic Resident Evil games. Especially when you're near your bed and it's a safe area, it kind of reminds me of the safe rooms in the classic Resident Evil games. But I also don't want to forget about Dying Light 1's music. The music was so good I was actually nervous about Dying Light 2's music, not being up to par with Dying Light 1's music. But Dying Light 2's music just sets the bar even higher. It's not a Dying Light game if the music isn't setting the bar to being very memorable. And I still gotta say, I still really enjoy Dying Light 1's music till this day. YouTuber TheRadBrad said many times about Dying Light 1's music it was so good, and same goes for Dying Light 2, non-stop the music is just so good. He even also gave his opinion about Dying Light 2, saying he really enjoyed the story a lot after he just finished his playthrough of the main story of the game. I can definitely tell TheRadBrad enjoys these type of zombie apocalypse games stories, since in his Dying Light 1 playthrough, he mentioned The Walking Dead a bit. He also mentioned The Walking Dead again in his Dying Light 2 playthrough, mentioning how on this one highway, it reminded him how Rick Grimes was traveling down the highway on the horse in The Walking Dead Season 1. TheRadBrad most of the time asks his audience, what's their favorite zombie movie when he plays an awesome zombie apocalypse game, and that's exactly what comes to my mind as well. It just makes me want to bring up a lot of other zombie apocalypse related franchises, since me and TheRadBrad are people just well familiar with the zombie apocalypse genre, and it's more of what we like. So yeah, to the people who are sick and tired of zombie apocalypse stories, this type of genre isn't going away, because there are still a lot of people out there like either me or TheRadBrad who really enjoy this genre. I could say the same thing about the Fortnite Battle Royale fandom. So many people don't like it, but it still remains popular because so many people like it. But personally, I'm not a fan. But I know it's not going anywhere because it's successful because of the fans. Just look at the Walking Dead's franchise. It's still running too, and people are wondering why it's not completely gone yet. The Walking Dead main show is ending this year, but the universe of The Walking Dead is still gonna be going on because it still has a very successful cult following fandom. This is why the zombie apocalypse genre isn't going away anytime soon. Also, look at Call of Duty Zombies. They are still going after many years. I'm personally not a fan of Call of Duty Zombies as much as I used to be though, but it still remains to be in the future Call of Duty games. But now, I just want to give my overall score review for Dying Light 2 Stay Human. I give it a solid 9.4 out of 10. This is a zombie slayer's dream come true for sure. The Dying Light series is kind of like the GTA and Assassin's Creed of the zombie genre because of the amount of freedom in the open worlds are at your fingertips. But that's all for this honest review. I know I had to bring up a lot of other franchises and a bunch of other off-topic things to really make my honest review make sense and get you guys to really understand how my understanding of the zombie apocalypse genre is, since I've really grown up with the zombie genre. My first ever zombie experience I've seen was when I was a little kid, when I watched my brother play the original Resident Evil 1 remake on the GameCube, and I was just too young to watch him play it, and it was really scary, but I still loved it. I was an unusual little kid who enjoyed zombies a lot. But consider subscribing to the channel for more Dying Light 2 videos, and ding that bell icon really hard so I can always stay within fast reach of your fingertips when new uploads arrive. ZombfectedGaming 349 over and out.
Yeah.